I think this is a good time to dust off my old Where to Start series. We've looked at many consoles in the past, and the topic today is the Sony PlayStation 5. It seems that now the console isn't as difficult to find in stock as it was for the last few years, so I think the timing is right. Whether you got one as a gift, want to buy one for yourself, or are a parental unit who wants to get one for their child, this video is for you. At the end, you should have a decent overview of the system, and what to get along with it, or what you might want to get in the future. I don't know about you, but I reckon we should look at the console itself first. That almost makes sense. There's two options available, or rather there was two options anyway until recently. As of recording, there's been an announcement that there's two more options available. Since launch, there's been a standard model with a Blu-ray disc drive and a download-only model without an optical drive. A new slim version of the console is going to roll out, which takes a cut out of the original console's large dimensions, though it still is quite big, and there will be two versions again, one with an optical drive and one without. But the nice thing is that you can add the drive later on if you so choose, though apparently you need an internet connection to pair the drive in the system, but I mean, that's not going to be a problem for most people, I don't think. Perhaps more of a problem once becomes an old console and then, you have to somehow pair it when support's been dropped, but hey, that's probably like 5 to 10 years into the future. Another difference between the old and new slim models is that the new one comes with 1 terabyte of onboard SSD storage, while the old one only has 825 gigabytes. As I'm recording this, the slim model actually hasn't come out yet, but those seem to be the only differences from what I can tell in terms of functionality. One other thing is that the original PS5s came with a stand for both vertical and horizontal positioning, while the new PS5 requires you to buy a vertical stand if you want to have it oriented like that. The old model will be slowly replaced with the new one as the old stock gets sold, though you should see the slim models in November 2023. I guess it kind of depends where you live and how the stock of the old system is. Or maybe you're watching this in the future and the slim model may already be everywhere, or maybe the PS5 is long discontinued and you're just watching this for nostalgia reasons. In terms of ports, the original PS5 has one USB-C port on the front with a USB-A port next to it. There's two more USB-A ports along with a gigabit Ethernet, HDMI, and power cable port. That's on the back of the system, just in case that wasn't clear. So nothing that most of us haven't seen at one point or another. I kind of miss the old days though, when you could remove a panel and then reveal a mysterious port that never ended up being used by anything. All USB ports are super speed USB ports, so that's 10 gigabytes per second. Gigabits or gigabytes? Anyways. Except for the USB-A port on the front. That's a slow one. In terms of unseen connectivity, in other words wireless specs, it has Wi-Fi 6, aka 802.11ax, and also Bluetooth 5.1. It's yet unclear what the situation is exactly on the PS5 Slim. It looks like there's two USB-C ports on the front rather than, a USB-C and a USB-A port. But once the system's out, it should be easy enough to find out, what else is going on in terms of connectivity on the back. But it can't be that much different from what's going on with the original. But they did confirm with wireless stuff, everything stays the same. So there's no difference between the systems there. Once you have your console, I recommend getting a second controller. That's pretty much my basic advice for any system. Thankfully, there's bundles that come with a second controller anyway, and then also a game, so yeah. That's probably how a lot of you are getting your consoles or have gotten your systems there. It's also a way to save a bit of money compared to buying everything separately. That's kind of the point of those. PS4 controllers, by the way, work on the PS5, but not with PS5 games. So yeah, that's really useful to know. So they're only useful for backwards compatibility, though you can just use your PS5 controllers. And to be honest, I think the PS5 controller is just a better, more ergonomically shaped thing, but everybody has different hands. There's a more expensive version of the PS5 controller called the DualSense Edge. It's similar to the idea of what the Xbox Elite controllers are supposed to be, but we'll discuss that at another point in the video, since most people will just use the regular controllers. All early versions of the PS5 have the same amount of SSD storage built in, that's 825 gigabytes, a bit of a weird number. As stated before, the slim model will have 1 terabyte instead. The solid stateness of it all is great when it comes to loading times, but unfortunately, it's probably not going to cut it when it comes to holding all your games. Thankfully, storage is expandable in several different ways. Both external and internal upgrades are available, but what you choose depends on what you want to do. You want to go internal for more storage, generally speaking. Why? Because that's the only storage solution that allows you to run PS5 games off of said storage. Anything connected externally through USB ports will not work for PS5 games. You can store them on there, but you'll have to transfer them onto internal storage in order to run them. So you can really only use external drives for temporary offloading when it comes to PS5 games. But for PS4 drives, external drives are excellent because you can not only store but also run PS4 games off of external drives. For internal storage, the PS5 website gives you specs on what you can install, though basically what it is, they are like, those M.2 SSDs, NVMe stuff. And you can find plenty that are marketed specifically for the PS5. So if you're not technically minded, they're very easy to find. Just go to Amazon and type in PS5 SSD and then you get a list. So that makes it quite easy. But still, you can look up the specs online if you want to. Installation is pretty simple, with one side of the PS5 needing to be removed only. It sounds daunting to some people perhaps, but it just snaps in and out of place without the need for tools, so it's not bad at all, even for the technically unminded. Plenty of videos online show the procedure, and yeah, as I said, there's no tools required or anything. I recently put in a 2TB SSD in mine, and it's great. For external storage, I personally use a 1TB drive that I found on sale several years ago, just for my PS4 games. It's actually a hard drive, so not an SSD thing, which in a way I kind of regret, because if I had gotten a solid state drive, then yeah, loading times would be greatly reduced on PS4 games, which would be a nice thing. Right now I can just transfer them to the internal storage, but anyways, just a bit of info because you might want to go with solid state right from the beginning with that sort of thing. And of course, going solid state with your external drive also makes moving games a lot faster. And remember, don't plug it in the USB-A port because that one's slow. Some of you may be tempted to get a new TV or monitor for your PS5. A number of people already have 4K displays, while others don't. If you're wondering if there's a perceivable difference between PS4 and PS5 games on a 1080p screen, the answer is usually yes. The PS5 has ray tracing, for example, that's quite noticeable. And PS5 games usually have better graphics that are noticeable independent of the resolution of the screen, like better textures and higher polygon models, for example. Remember, a PS4 is like a computer basically from who knows how long ago, so it's not just the resolution that's improved. Plus, there's also performance improvements, which mainly applies to PS4 games. So if there's some that have struggled on a PS4, then a number of those will run much better on the PS5. I have had some good experience there. Some games are locked to 30 FPS, and that's kind of annoying, but whatever. A lot of games do have some improvements, some that stutter here and there become smooth. Of course, going with a 4K TV would be optimal, and that's probably what most people do because most people who buy a PS5 also have a 4K TV. Speaking of, picture quality and everything, the PS5 supports HDR10 for high dynamic range, and it also supports 120Hz output. Some games do support 120 frames per second, but the majority run at 60 FPS maximum. That also depends whether you have the system set to performance or graphics mode. That's very game dependent though. Sony says the PS5 supports 8K, but there really aren't any games, technically only one. And that isn't technically 8K according to what I read, so just think of the PS5 as a 4K device. Let's talk about what is probably the most annoying part of buying a new console, and that is online subscriptions. Yes, you need to pay for a PlayStation Plus subscription in order to play online. There's a very small list of exemptions to that rule, because some games do work, but yeah, you might want to look that up. Somewhat recently, Sony changed up their plans. They saw what Microsoft is doing with Xbox Game Pass and decided they wanted something very similar. Basically a premium service that gives you access to a library of games. In other words, an excuse to charge people more money. There are 3 tiers with different benefits and, of course, different costs. They are Essential, Extra, and Premium. Essential is the most affordable. It gives you access to online multiplayer, monthly games, exclusive discounts, and cloud storage for save games, plus a few extra things here and there. So basically, it's the regular PlayStation Plus thing that people were used to for many years before they introduced this new tiered system. The other tiers build on that by giving you access to games to play with Game Catalog and also Ubisoft Plus Classics. Premium also includes game trials on top of that and cloud streaming. And just so you know, prices vary from country to country, but you probably already know that. So I'm not going to show you my Canadian prices here. You just have to go to the PlayStation Plus website and you'll see what it costs where you live. Let's talk about accessories for a little bit. I mentioned the DualSense Edge controller earlier. As you can imagine, it is a more costly option compared to the regular controller. It has various features and customization abilities that some people might find very appealing. You can change stick caps, you can replace joystick modules, make use of dedicated function buttons, there's swappable and mappable back buttons, and finally you can also adjust the amount of travel the triggers have. Those are the big ones anyways, in terms of features. There's more you can actually adjust, like sensitivity and dead zone settings, among other things. For some of you, it may be worth checking out. Personally, I'm fine with the regular controllers. I don't really see how that gives you much more benefit. If you want, you can also get a media remote. Seems like a small thing, but if you use your PS5 a lot for watching videos, then, why not? These next couple of accessories I'm just going to mention briefly. Personally, I don't use them, but you may want to look into them. Headsets are a pretty common accessory, as you may imagine. There's wired and wireless options. Plenty of models available and lots of reviews you can look at. Just so you know, the PS5 does not support Bluetooth audio, presumably due to latency. Wireless headsets will come with a transmitter, so yeah, just a little FYI there. One thing to note is that you don't need a headset to talk to people online if you just want to do that here and there. You can use the controller's built-in microphone. There's a button that mutes and unmutes it. So if it's muted, it's yellow, and then clear when it's unmuted. Or wait, what color is it? I don't know. It's always muted, so I don't even know if it lights up if it's unmuted. Presumably not the most high-quality mic, going by what I hear in COD lobbies. By the way, just as a PSA, when you first get your PS5, go to the controller settings and mute it by default. It's not muted by default at all, so I don't know why, but it should be, just so you're not saying stuff, and then suddenly everybody's like, hey, what's this guy talking about? There's also the PlayStation VR2, which is a virtual reality headset. There's several games that make use of it. If you're into VR, you might want to have a look at it. VR is kind of its own thing, so I'm not really going to talk about it in this video. If you're streaming and wanting to broadcast your face to the world, there's also the HD camera. I think that's all you really need in terms of accessories or really need to know about. There's some other stuff, but these covers you can put over your thumbsticks or whatever, but doesn't seem worth talking about. When it comes to games, it's a bit interesting. There's 2 generations worth of games to explore, PS5 and PS4, just like I said before. If you've never had a PS4 or didn't really partake in gaming during that generation, then there's that console's library to explore. And if you have or have had a PS4, then great, you can still play your games on the PS5. And often they look and run better too. It is worth mentioning that many, if not most, PS5 games are available as PS4 games. Due to various reasons, this is a rather long transition between console generations, and because of this, many PS4 games are upgradable to PS5 games or PS5 versions free of charge. If you Google something along the lines of PS4 games free upgrade to PS5, something like that, then you should be able to find up-to-date lists. And since PS4 games are about $10 or so cheaper, that may also be a way to save a bit of money. When it comes to recommendations, well, that's always difficult. Everyone likes different things, me included. I enjoy a wide variety of games ranging from the painfully mainstream to the painfully niche. You can always check various best PS5 games lists and you'll find a lot to choose from. Usually they make sure to include a good variety with a few oddball or more obscure choices here and there. Another way of going about it is subscribing to one of the PlayStation Plus plans, the ones that offer you a library of games to play. There's probably a free trial anyway if you've, bought your console, so best to make use of that. Compared to how things were before, there are not many exclusives anymore because many games still have PS4 versions being released. It is true that there are PlayStation exclusives though. For example, Gran Turismo 7 is a PlayStation exclusive, but it's on the PS4 and 5, so it's not a PS5 exclusive. The PS5 also has a large amount of Japanese games. Kind of a lasting effect from developers transferring over from Nintendo to Sony in the 90s, among other events. Some are more mainstream, while many are more niche and obscure. People who are into these games will find a large selection of games, though other platforms like PC and Switch are a good platform for those kind of games as well. Now, it is true that Sony for some reason has been clamping down on Japanese games and developers specifically. It's about content Sony thinks is inappropriate. Strangely, rating boards like PEGI and also the ESRB don't have any problems with the content they tell developers to remove from their games. Usually it's like sexual content. Many instances it's very mild though, like, how much of a character's back is visible on an outfit, or panty shots and, fan servicey stuff in general. But for some reason, violence and gore has been affected occasionally. For example, in Doki Doki Literature Club, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, since it's an infamous game, they censored the blood by changing its color to black. Because, Western games don't have any of that going on. I don't know, that's just so embarrassing, I think. That's like in the 90s, when Nintendo removed the blood in Mortal Kombat. But they changed their attitude a bit later on because, rating systems became commonplace. These days, Sony doesn't really have that excuse. The systems of categorizing game content and how suitable they are for certain age groups or various age groups is already well in place. Anything they're doing on top of that is just senseless meddling. But because of this, we have games that are different on the PS5 and 4 compared to their PC, Switch, or Xbox counterparts. Some developers decided to just tone down their games from the start so they can say, hey, all of our games are the same, there's no changes. But yeah, it's a thing, and this may or not be a thing you concern yourself with. But now you know if you didn't. But yeah, that's a bit of a rundown on the Sony PlayStation 5. Now you should have a good overview of the console, no matter what your situation is. I hope that was helpful, or at the very least entertaining in some way. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.